Do you ever wish that somebody would just tell you what you need to do to get art clients? Do you ever wish that somebody would just be honest with you, maybe give you some actionable advice? That'd be great, right? Well, in this video series, you're gonna learn the real things that you can really do starting right now in order to get those art clients. And that starts with 3 simple things that you need that you probably don't have yet. Now, the very first thing that you need to do when you're gonna start art commissions is that you need to know exactly what you're offering to a client. People need to be able to see your artwork and know, boom, that's what I'm gonna pay money for. So let's take a look at some really common issues that I see all the time from people that are not getting commissions very frequently, if at all. So as we take a look at this example right here, over on the left, we have some cute, kind of chibi-ish characters. In the middle, we have some more flat, cel-shaded type of characters. And then all the way over to the right here, we have some big fantasy characters and some portraits. It's too confusing. As a client, I look at this and I just think, I don't really know what exactly I'm gonna get out of this person. Here's another prime example of this. Again, this is way too broad. So this person is doing sprites, flat colors, shaded, full illustrations, fantasy illustrations, and realistic. Y'all, there's like 5 different types of artwork on here. This is way too broad. You don't want to appear like you're this jack of all trade artist that can just do anything. It's just not advisable. What you do need to do is you need to narrow down what you are offering. This makes you appear like a true professional and like somebody who's actually got a lot of expertise in whatever type of commission field that you want. So there's 2 things that you need to narrow down, which are the style and the genre. Those are 2 very, very different concepts, and important that you understand the differences here. So let me go ahead and give you a few examples. So this is actually the most common example that I get approached with a lot. People that will reach out to me on Instagram is that they'll say, I want to do anime commissions. And I'm like, dude, that's great. That's an awesome style. But what the heck do you want to do with it? Anime is the aesthetic that you want to capture, okay? But what do? You can't just say, oh, I want to do anime OCs, because here are a few different versions of what the heck you might get or might possibly want to do with it. You might want to do My Hero Academia OCs. You might want to do Demon Slayer OCs. You might want to do characters from Genshin Impact. Again, this is too broad. You might want to do anime schoolgirl OCs. Like, there's a huge umbrella that you can do with this, and it's just too broad to start out with. Again, if you're just starting, this is way too broad of a spectrum. You want to narrow this down. So here's an example of a very profitable field that you could go into with anime, and you could do Final Fantasy XIV commissions. These are very lucrative and they're very abundant, and people love to see this stuff done because it's in a very different style than what you play in the game. So let's take a look at 3D modeling. Now again, there's a lot of people that are big time into this, and this is so unspecific. What are you going to do in 3D modeling? Do you want to do monsters? Do you want to make people? Do you want to make vehicles? There's so much that you can do. Now again, here's how you can narrow that down. So again, the style is 3D modeling. The genre is gonna be environments. There's a huge demand for environments all of the time, and it's really, really great for artists out there. And if you're in 3D modeling, this would be a field that I would definitely say there's a lot of need for. See how I did that? We took what the style was, 3D modeling, and then we went ahead and we applied it to the genre of environments. Now let me show you my example. So if you follow me, if you follow my Instagram, which you should probably, then you're gonna know that my style is semi-realism and my genre is Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy illustrations. These go harmoniously together. So here's my governing advice for you, just starting out, or if you're trying to get more clients, is you want to super narrow down into one specific genre when you start out, because you don't want to be the Walmart of commissions. You don't want to be this, hey, come and get anything type of artist, okay? Those are people that are just confusing clients. They don't know what to expect. It doesn't instill confidence. And overall, it's really not an advisable business strategy, okay? And what you instead want to do, my friend, is you want to be the Rolex. And when you think of Rolex, you think of watches, right? You want to be that artist that when people think of you, they think of, oh, that style and that genre of commissions. Now you want to go ahead and conduct a market analysis to see if this is something that can actually make you money, to see if there is demand. Because yes, you might want to do similar to this, weird cat people. Yeah, I'm not really sure exactly what this is. If this is from a game, can someone please tell me here down below? When I look at this, I'm just thinking, I'm not really sure exactly what you're looking for, bro, but yeah, anthro cat people that are ultra simplified, I don't really know about this. This is not really honing into anything that I think people are gonna really want and want to pay a good amount of money for. So when we take a look at this person's example, I see 4 totally different types of commissions here. All 4 of these are perspective fields, okay? There's a huge market for monster creations. There's a huge market for sci-fi. And there's a huge market, again, for furry and anthro art. What you would want to do is, again, see which one of those you think that you could make a good amount of money off of, but you also don't want to betray what you like to do, all right? And I really want to caution you on this for a second here. Do not just pick a genre that you have 0 interest in. So you're probably wondering right now, well, how do I even figure out if there is a demand, if there is a market for the type of artwork that I want to do? Well, it's really simple, my friend. Some things that you can do is you can go ahead and look on the DeviantArt jobs forums postings. You can take a look on Reddit subreddits, and you can take a look to see if anybody's asking or requesting or paying for that type of artwork. That's always a really great place to go for it too. But also you can check out Discord servers. You can check out Facebook groups. Just look at places where potential clients are going to be and where artists are and what they're asking for, because more than likely that's where you're going to find a really great niche for you to insert yourself into and to make some cash on it. Now you're ready to go ahead and assemble your examples so that you can hook clients into wanting to buy your services. Great, right? However, though, most people do an absolute terrible job at this. So let's take a look at some more bad commission sheets to exemplify exactly what people do wrong. So let's take a look at my first victim, example here. So here we're going to see somebody who offers 5 different type of renders, sketch, line art, flat base color, cell shading, and then a full render. My friends, I just need you to know this. I really want you to hear me because nobody else is going to tell you this except for people that aren't earning good money and they're not getting regular commissions. You should never offer line arts, sketches, flat bases, anything less than a full render. My friend, you do not want to create something that you can't put into your portfolio. But I'm just gonna tell you, if you're gonna go ahead and put it out there for a sketch, what are you gonna charge for that? 10, 20 bucks? It's not worth your time, my friends. You can go work at McDonald's and make more money than that. What you should only focus on producing are full renders. So this is no, trash all of this except for that last example. So now let me show you what you need to do in order to get clients. And this is really killer advice that nobody else is gonna tell you on this. So here are the 3 types of artworks that you need to have in order to start to capture clients. You need a bust, you need a half body, you need a full body, and if you're up for it, you do a full illustration. That's it, that's all you need. Here's my greatest advice for you. If you show clients that you can produce at least 3 or 4 different types of artwork, you're going to be able to show that you have a big depth of knowledge, and you're going to be able to show them that you appear to be an expert in what you're trying to do because you have a narrowed style and you have a narrowed genre, and you know that that is a profitable market. And now you're showing them, boom, I have done all of these things and you are golden. You're going to be very attractive versus everybody that's just kind of using the old mentality of just throwing out whatever and it looking like some bad art school portfolio. That's not what you want to do with commissions, my friend. Now that you understand this, let me tell you about some of the most popular niches and the most profitable ones too. You're going to learn about the most popular niches that clients want, that there's a good amount of demand for, and that you can do with a lot of styles. So I'm going to be letting you know exactly what works best for them, what you need to know, and if it's going to be enjoyable for you. So check these out. Few things I gotta get out of the way. There's definitely some that I am not gonna go over today because I feel like they're pretty obvious. First and foremost, not safe for work. You don't even have to really be that good to get into not safe for work, and not clowning on anybody that doesn't, but just saying. And along with that too, furry artwork. I'm not gonna be going over this at all. And then lastly on here, AI artwork. Why? Well, because AI artwork, for commission's sake, is pretty much always a scam, and it's not worth it because anybody can generate anything, so therefore it has 0 value. So if you're not interested in doing any of those, my friend, then you should definitely check out these. There's no shortage of MMORPG games. I'm talking World of Warcraft, Black Desert, Genshin Impact, Final Fantasy 14. Y'all, there is a huge market for people that want to have custom characters made. So what you need to know in order to get into this is definitely you have to have a very high comfort level, generally speaking here at least, with fantasy style artwork. So if you're somebody that's good with specific type of armor sets or costuming, and especially with different classes and races, this is really great for you too. Now this is pretty well open to mostly anime and semi-realism as far as I know. Here are my best tips for you. Number 1 is definitely definitely start to draw characters in non-neutral poses. Start to draw them in dynamic poses. They're casting magic, they're fighting, they're slashing. Those kinds of things really appeal to people because that's literally what they experience in games. Along with that too, if you can do multiple character commissions, that's gonna set you up really well. And then also, if you can do backgrounds, boom, that's awesome. When you can put that custom MMORPG character into a recognizable environment, boom, it'll blow their mind and it'll definitely set your artwork apart. So these are my best tips for you to get into this scene in order to have your portfolio stand out. This one's gonna come as a surprise, at least it did for me, but I have been seeing this one for literally years. And with the ever-growing library of Pokemon games, y'all, people want to have Pokemon trainers. They have their own original OC Pokemon trainers, and they would love to have them made by you. And these are generally real geared towards people that either do an anime or a painterly style, because that generally feeds into what the general aesthetic of the game is right there. Now, if this is something that you want to get into, friend, let me just give you this piece of advice. Know some Pokemon. You don't need to know all Pokemon, but know some Pokemon. Be familiar generally with the systems of it. And that's going to generally allow you to work best with your clients on that. In order to make your portfolio stand out, you can have a pretty good range of stuff, but generally this is one of the ones that's going to work well with just neutral poses. People want to see just what does their character look like, what does their OC look like, or an existing character look like, maybe with a different outfit, something like that. Also, if you can do them battling and or their Pokemon with them battling, that's going to show off really, really nicely too. And then again, if you can add into your current portfolio a location, someplace that is in-game that somebody in that field would recognize, boom, you are going to stand out really, really well. This one is near and dear to my heart, friend, but Dungeons and Dragons and general fantasy characters. So this is when you're going to be doing adventurers and they're going to be going on quests and they're going to be having moments. Now, if this is something that you're thinking about getting into, here's what you need to like in order to really excel with this. Number one is that you have to be very familiar with different races, both human and non-human. I'm talking orcs, I'm talking elves, but I'm also talking like dragons, I'm talking animals. So you need to be familiar with creating not just humanoids, but non-humanoids as well. You being able to know and be able to replicate specific armor sets, specific weapons, and specific accessories is really going to help you excel too, because that is something that somebody is in a Dungeons & Dragons or fantasy universe is going to demand. As far as the genres that work out really well in here, it's pretty much open to everything, all right? Anything from realism to anime to painterly to unique styles. Now, I'm going to give you some best practices here because as somebody that does a lot of Dungeons & Dragons fantasy artwork, okay, here's what I noticed. First off, y'all, you got to know how to do dynamic lighting. You have to be able to do a lighting source that's not boom, straight from the center, okay? When you can implement dynamic light sources that are not just skylight, then you can do some really amazing things. Along with that too, if you can do multiple character illustrations and you can show dynamic interactions and you can show battles and you can show calm moments or tavern moments, this is really going to set you apart big time. And along with that too, full-blown illustrations. Y'all get super good at magic effects too. This is a real game changer and it's something that's definitely going to set you apart and make clients want to flock to you. Since people can mostly self-publish a lot nowadays, you're going to find a lot of book cover and light novel illustration work for you too. And this can range, by the way, so if you can get into this scene, you can really do a lot. Real quick caveat though, make sure that it is always going to be your work and that you're not undersold for it, because there's a big danger in that. There's a lot of really cheap authors out there, but if you do get into it, here's what you should definitely be prepared for. In this, what's gonna really do well for you is generally I notice people are wanting either a realism, semi-realism, or anime style. Those tend to be the big ones out there. And if you wanna get into this, here's what you can expect to do. You can be expecting to do overall scenes, you can be expecting to do characters and or multiple characters, and basically you're gonna be doing a lot of mood work too, because you're setting the stage, you're enticing somebody to want to go ahead and read that book, to read that novel, to read that ebook, and that's gonna be the first thing that they notice, so you have to be able to market it in such a way that it's gonna convey the main character or the purpose of the story. So what do you need to know and like in order to get into this? First off, anatomy, because 9 times out of 10, an author is going to need somebody to do a character. Along with that too, though, the big purpose is visual storytelling. Can you tell a story through your artwork? Have you started to learn that? Are you starting to apply that? If not, I would definitely get into that. You're going to need to know how to make expressions on faces so that it is not just neutral pose, and it's also not pretty girl emptiness pose. It's really boring. Now, in order to make your portfolio stand out best, here are some of my best tips for you to include. Get better at mood lighting. Get better at using non-native colors on your illustrations on your characters so that it can tell a story. It can make you feel a certain way. It can make you feel surprised or horrified. And along with that too, get used to magic and special effects too, because that is also going to make you stand out big time. It's going to attract a large crowd to you in order to make your portfolio stand out. These are my best tips for this genre. Now, if you've been going at this alone for quite a while and you're still not getting there and you're not sure what to do, then you might need a little bit of help. So I want to offer that to you through the form of my Art Mentorship. This is a one-on-one personalized experience. It's not a class, it's not a course. If you're somebody that likes to make specific scenes, locales, landscapes, and locations, environment art is going to be great for you, my friend. So there's a big, heavy demand for environment art. And honestly, this tends to fetch a bigger price tag for you than just general concept art for characters too. People seeking to get into the scene generally do really well with either a painterly or a semi-realism/realism style as well. Here's what you need to know, you need to like. You need to like the landscape fundamentals. You need to know how to create a vast array of entirely different types of landscapes. If you're totally unused to this, by the way, I made 2 tutorials that'll teach you how to draw literally anything, and I'll link them down below to help you out if you're really interested in this. You also really need to know how to do texture as well too. And it's also gonna be, to that effect, a really, really good skill set for you to have would be photo bashing, because that is definitely going to expedite the whole process. Now, in order to make your environment portfolio stand out, here's what I recommend for you is, first off, you need a large variety of a lot of different type of environments. So everything from modern ones, I'm talking like maybe urban landscapes and things like that, all the way up to high fantasy. You want some castles, you want some really cool exotic locations in there. Far future sci-fi, show me some things in outer space, show me some terrain on another planet, show some cityscapes. But basically, you want to have a good diversity in your portfolio of what do you like to do. And if you can narrow in on one of those two, either modern, high fantasy, or future sci-fi, then that's also going to raise your overall price tag, your perceived value, and therefore your clientele as well. So try that out. From games like Destiny, Cyberpunk 2077, if you've watched Cyberpunk Edge Runners, if you've maybe played Halo or Mass Effect, y'all, the sci-fi and cyberpunk universes are always in demand, and they're pretty much always on trend, especially nowadays. Here I'm talking big, chunky, militaristic armor, I'm talking futuristic fashion, we're talking cybernetic components, we're talking modified people, we're talking about things that are not currently here but will be here in the future. Okay, so if you really want to get into this, here's what you need to like. You need to love technology, like all components of it, because it's really going to help you out. And if you're going to be doing more casual characters too, really get into the habit of looking at avant-garde clothing. I'm talking like Paris clothing, like fashion show kind of stuff. That's going to really inspire you to create really cool, different looking future designs. You should definitely make sure your portfolio contains a large variety of different armored type of characters. Everything from very lightly, casually armored into huge, chunky, like could have a missile bounce off of them or take no damage type of armor, you know what I mean? And along with that too, different degrees of cybernetics. You can have different humans that have been, or animals too for that fact, you can have them differently modified levels from just a little bit, maybe a couple, into like almost all the way cybernetics. Always works really well too. Along with that, be very familiar with sci-fi design for guns and weapons and clothing too. And then finally, one thing that's really gonna set you apart is if you can do those types of characters and do those types of illustrations with an illustrated background, which I generally recommend is gonna be kind of a cityscape and or a dystopian urban landscape. That's gonna help you really get set apart from the rest. Now this one is going to be definitely the most despised, it's going to be the least sought after, and therefore it's good for you because that means that there's a huge void for you. But any type of mech is really, really, really in demand all the time. And there's always something coming out, be it a video game like Destiny or Mass Effect or a big Hollywood blockbuster film that's gonna have a huge clunky robot in it. And especially like with the Gundam series, every single like few years we get a new Gundam series, right? This is going to produce a huge new slew of clients that wanna have awesome mech designs. And there's not a lot of people that like to do this, so therefore that means that there is a big market for that and people will pay for it too. Now, if this is something that you wanna get into, generally you can go ahead and knock this out in either an anime style, a realism style, and you can also get into it as well if you're into the 3D component. Man, people will love the snot out of that too. And if you like this, things you need to know how to do mechanics, how to do armor, how to do different guns and different ammunitions, and you need to basically be able to design something that can realistically move and not just look good. That's a big flaw I see in a lot of mech designs, is that it looks good, but there's no conceivable way that it could actually move and operate the way it's intended to. So you need to be a little bit familiar with engineering and how to actually put machinery together. So you can definitely study up some like construction equipment and stuff that's generally going to bring you to the best possible result if you're learning and wanting to get into this. For my overall best tips in this genre, here's what I recommend. Number one is that you need to have basically a pretty extensive array of different robots, everything that could be in the modern age, all the way up to like nowhere near our current era where things are just so flippin' like starting to look humanoid, like kind of like Neon Genesis Evangelion-esque. Also, what works really great with this one, you gotta know this, you gotta know how to do special effects lighting, explosions, gunfire, make it not look cheesy, you know? If you can put these into a background, that is a even better situation too, because if you can go ahead and put that mech battling another mech and there's explosions and gunfire and all kinds of crazy hell happening there, and you could put them into like an urban landscape, or you can put them into a cityscape, or you can put them into like desert warfare kind of thing. So be familiar with how to do that, be familiar with how to do textures, be familiar with not only how to make the robot look pretty in its pristine form, but also when it's like battle damaged and scarred and burnt. And also to help you with that, no photo bashing, because that is also going to set you apart big time. Next is dark fantasy. So definitely since the advent of games like Elden Ring or Dark Souls, Demon Souls, and plenty more out there, there's a lot of people with a lot of really amazing, great ideas. So if you're a really big fan of any of the IPs I just went over, then this is definitely going to be a great place for you. And also what's going to need to happen a lot is you to do a lot of heavy texture work. You need to enjoy not doing just clean, pristine characters. No, people are going to need to be like beaten up and scarred and charred. Bringing that monstrous component to it is really going to help you enjoy doing this type of work. As far as styles that really excel into this, I see a whole lot of anime, realism, painterly, photo bash, 3D work as well. Just basically, this is pretty open to a lot of different styles, so it can be definitely great for you, my friend. You gotta need to know how to do different armors, all right? Especially if it's like an Elden Ring character, you're gonna need to know how to do specific dark fantasy armor, and you need to be able to understand through the form language there, how do you make dark fantasy armor look very different from high fantasy armor, because they're not the same, y'all. I would also very much recommend that you know how to photo bash in order to really accelerate this, bring textural aspects to it, and bring some mood to it. Along with that too, special effects and mood lighting. Huge for this, because people are gonna want those big moody scenes and those characters that just look hulking and brooding and dangerous. And that's how you're gonna set yourself apart. So now you're ready to learn why you don't ever wanna use an art commission sheet. And if you are, stop doing it. I'm gonna tell you why right now. So overall, the theory of why people like to do commission sheets and why this became so popular makes sense. It really does. Essentially, up-and-coming artists started to copy what really high-performing, high-achieving, high-earning artists did, which was they made these sheets. And the spirit of it makes sense, right? You want to be able to just quickly communicate with clients what kind of services they offer at what prices that they offer it at. However, though, everything has gone awry with this practice because of these flaws. Over the years of people doing this and it becoming very popularized, some very obvious flaws start to come into play that a lot of people overlook or don't consider. The first major flaw that I can identify is that people take too much time creating them. It's just a waste of your time. I'm speaking from personal experience on this as well. I remember spending hours to create the perfect looking template, and it did not help at all, and it does not help most artists. The second issue with commission sheets is that they tend to offer services that nobody really buys or cares about, and they also tend to involve a lot of really bad examples, and we're gonna discuss this, and I'm gonna show you examples of it heavily in this video. And the third now, most important issue that you can identify with any pricing sheet is that they predominantly involve disrespectfully low wages. If you just do a quick, simple Google search for pricing sheets, for commission sheets, you're gonna notice that most of them are like $50 and way the heck under that. These are completely unsustainable wages that nobody should be advertising or offering their services for. It really degrades art in general. We have completely lost the essence, we've lost the good spirit of why people do this. Now let's take a look at some other flaws that I see all the time. First, most common issue that I see, especially with artists that are just starting out and they wanna start to get commissions, is the concept of lazy imagery that they post onto their commission sheet. This is the most common issue I see with artists that are just starting out on commissions and they have in their commission sheets. So here we have a pretty common example that I see all the time where we have somebody that offers headshots, half bodies, and full bodied artwork. But the issue here is that rather than just having one type of artwork for each type of service that they're offering, they just have one freaking image and then they just splice it across. And this is just crazy lazy because it basically just reeks of like, well, I don't have an example, but you get the point here. And breaking it down in this way is really ineffective. Here you can see another version of this as well. This person also decided to do levels of completion, and I'm going to talk to you about that. But here we have the same person that's just standing there 3 times in a row, and now we can see a sketch versus a flat versus a full color. Why wouldn't you just do one that's supposed to be done in each version of them? It's really lame. And yes, here's another example as well. And this person decided to even stretch this out even more into what I'm talking about here, where it's the same image. Now it's 4 times. This does not show that you have a whole breadth of experience in here, and it does not inspire a lot of confidence. It just makes it look like you don't try or you don't create art a lot. Now this one's kind of cool looking, to be honest, but I'm just gonna be very blunt about this. I really don't see that much of a difference between all of these. Again, if I'm a client and I'm looking at this, I need to see a varying difference between what do I get at what price points and what does my finished product look like. The sketch that's in the back is really not different at all from the line art in front of it. And there's very minimal difference between the line art and the color version versus the full rendered version. So while this is cool and I'm not knocking the artwork itself, I am, however, going to critique you on the actual examples that you're providing. If I'm a client, all this tells me is that all you can do is sci-fi elves. Now, before we continue here, let me go ahead and give you a massive power tip. Stop putting in your sketches and line art into your pricing sheets. Nobody cares and nobody buys them. Only put on your finished works because you want to get maximum dollar, you want to get maximum money off this, and you want to deliver maximum quality to your client. So stop doing this. Nobody's buying it. Now with this, everything I just explained could just be simply fixed by providing a different example of a headshot, a bust, a half body, a full body. That's it. Do different examples for everything. It's just that simple. Another common issue with pricing sheets or commission sheets is that people tend to be way too freaking wordy with it, okay? Nobody's going to read all of that. Let's take a look at some examples of what I'm talking about. So this first one, I like that they actually have different examples of everything. This is what I was just talking to you all about. So they have a different image for the sketch, the line art, black and white, color, and shaded, okay? Now with all of this though, just look at the raw amount of text that they have going underneath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is about 9 different lines of text that you cannot and definitely should not put in there. This is totally unnecessary. And I see the spirit of this where you want to put all of your stuff like your contact info and your personal notes, what I do and I don't do, and this can be massively simplified. Here's another example too. So this goes back to what we just went over too, where there should be more examples involved here, but it's like, oh, if you want a headshot, a sketch, a color to shaded, a sketch, a color shaded, a sketch, a color shaded. Why do you need to do this? You should have different images and you don't need to break it down like this. This is too much reading for a client. Like if I'm really hooked onto this artist and I have to really sit there and be like, which version do I want? Is it worth $5 to $10 to go more? I don't know. You're giving them too many options and then they're gonna feel paralyzed by the amount that they have to analyze. What you need to do is you need to capture that client within 2 seconds, because especially as we're scrolling through, most people are doing on mobile nowadays, as we're scrolling through everything, you have 1 to 2 seconds to capture them. And if you don't, then they're gone and they're on to somebody else. And it's probably gonna be somebody that doesn't have a commission sheet, by the way. If your commission sheet is too complex and offers too much, it really overwhelms the client and it just doesn't work for them. Let's take a look at some examples. Now, this first one I'm gonna show you here, this one, this artwork is really cool, but again, it's really lazy too at the same time because it's showing you different stages of what you could get. And I'm just gonna be real and honest with this person. A lot of this is just really lazy. I don't really understand how you charge $15 more for a black and white version that all you had to do was go ahead and throw on a photo filter for it. That's kind of crooked. There's no real sense in that at all. So as I go through all of this too, again, I have too many things I need to look at. What level do I want? Oh, which one is cool? Which one do I not want to do with this? So here's the main issue around it. Whenever you offer these services, it's kind of like you're communicating to the client, when do I want to quit this? And what level of completion do I want to do, rather than me being focused on giving you, the client, the best possible version of the artwork. So don't do this. Instead, just offer different versions of what could you do. Now, yes, again, let's re-examine this one from this perspective as well. So sketch, line art, black and white, color shaded. Now, again, just looking at this from a client's perspective, what the crap is the difference between a sketch, a line art, black and white? Why is it $10 versus $20 when they fundamentally are the same? This is really something that nobody's going to do. If somebody wants black and white, man, they are going to ask you for black and white. When your commission sheet does not communicate the fact that you have to put in a lot more time and effort into your artworks, it devalues you as well. So this is another reason why this is not a good practice. And here, this is too complex, also because there's just too many options. There's not enough variation in those options either. If you're gonna have multiple options, there needs to be a lot more variation in it. And here's the big mama jama atom bomb of all of these too. Look at this whole thing. Now imagine you don't know this artist, and this artist has some pretty cool artwork when I really get into it. But in order to do this, again, if I was on mobile, I have to click on it, I have to expand it, I have to scroll around. Think about this. I mean, this is like a 20 to 30 second process just to figure out, are you right for me? And what a client's gonna do is they're gonna scroll right past it because it's not really legible. I have to zoom in too much, I have to examine this too much, I have to put too much time and effort and investment into somebody that they don't even know. I mean, overall, here's the fundamental concept here, is that you need to capture clients as fast as possible, as accurately as possible, because they're not going to invest the time into going through every single post with great detail, unless they are one of those magical unicorns that really wants to do that. But I'm gonna tell you my experience from freelancing from the last 8 years, this is not gonna be the case. But wait now, there's more. Now let me give you some of my personal gripes against commission sheets from my professional experience. First off is that you cannot have any type of graduated pricing, and that means that you cannot very easily go up in pricing whenever you feel like it. Another thing that should happen is that as you become more in demand and you get more clients and you're getting more consistent work, you need to be upping your prices so that you stay competitive and you stay into it, and then you are getting more compensated for what you do. Another issue that's really prevalent that you should understand is this sets a false expectation as far as the degree of difficulty involved in it. Let me just show you two characters right here. Character commission over here is very simplified. Basic close, basic pose. It's really simple. But the one over here though, this one has lots of high-tech armor, has a very different lighting situation to it. There's a lot more complexity involved in it. Issue with pricing sheets like this is that it just oversimplifies what your pricing is and what you need to do with it. And without any type of conversation about what the client is expecting, it sets that false expectation that, oh, just a full body character, no matter what, it's just gonna be this. It's not a good practice, trust me. I myself have gotten really burnt out working on characters like this and not getting paid enough, and I don't want that for you. It's a really sucky boat to be in. Now the last piece here, and I'm not trying to disrespect anybody, but I'm just gonna tell you the truth. Only cheap artists are doing this anymore. Only artists that are just starting out, only artists that see other people doing this and are pricing themselves down low are still doing this practice. I don't think you want to model yourself after this practice. I think that you deserve better. In fact, I know you deserve better, because if not, then you would not be watching this video. This practice is going to stagnate your development as a professional. I don't recommend it.
So if you really want to break through and you want to make an impact on clients and definitely make an impact on your bank account, you gotta stop doing what everybody else does and pick up this technique, which is gonna land you more clients, more money, and more repeats. Check this out.
So let me give you a pretty typical scenario. Somebody asks you, hey, how much does it cost for X? And then you respond with, okay, well, that costs Y. Does this look familiar to you? Because everything about it is totally wrong. I want to give you a really effective script that you can use in order to entice more clients, to get yourself more business, and to help develop better rapport with your clients so that they'll want to buy your services, and it's going to start right now. So first, let's examine the issue with this. First off, this is too short. It's too impersonal. You can't properly assess the client or the project. And overall, you're just degrading the entire commission process and the conversation into like a McDonald's drive-through style commission conversation instead. One of the major issues that I see here is that this type of interaction is totally devoid of any type of personal connection or experience, and it's not good for you or the client. So instead, what I recommend is that you follow the following steps to get more clients to want to work with you and want to buy more of your services afterwards. So step one's pretty simple. You should always make sure that any type of pricing or evaluation conversation is held in a direct message. So first off, if somebody asks you how much your services cost, the first thing you should tell them is, hey, DM me. There you can go ahead and you can pick up the conversation and restart it in a proper format.
My personal preference, for example, is Discord. I find that everybody pretty much has Discord. A lot of corporate clients have Discord as well, but you can easily use any other direct messaging service. I prefer direct message conversation. I would encourage you to use it too, because it's much better than email, because it's instantaneous conversation. I personally find that email is a very antiquated method of communication. It's less sticky, it's less messy. You don't have to worry about any of your direct messages getting deleted or missed. Now let me show you how you should go ahead and proceed forward in the conversation once you have this done. Now your first step here in your conversation is to excite them. So very basic question to ask is, hey, could you please tell me a little bit more about your project? I would love to hear it. And what you want to do is start this conversation with them and let them explain to you. And people love to talk about themselves. And this is a really great way for you to forge a bond through organic conversation, rather than just being a stale, cold, business heavy type of conversation. I'm going to teach you right now how you should go about this, and what this entire video goes over is how to create this through more of a low pressure sales conversation rather than a high pressure sales pitch. Now what you're going to gain from this is you're going to gain the whole overview of a project. You should never just go ahead and just slam out pricing when somebody asks you, because you don't know enough yet. And what I'm going to tell you from my personal experience with this and from talking with other artists that utilize this type of method is that clients actually want this. They like this because it shows that you appear that you're interested and you care about them. So clients really enjoy this. Now this whole process seems longer, but it's really essential so that you know this. You should always ask for as much detail as possible, because this will inform your quote. Now, as you're doing this, you don't have to make it seem like it's obvious and that's the only thing that you're going for, but you should respond excitedly. Ask them questions about it. Get to know what exactly they want. If they want you to design a book cover, if they want you to illustrate a book, if they want you to do a character design, or they want you to do a creature design or a model for them. Regardless of what that project is, respond excitedly and say things like, that's so cool. Oh, I love that. That's a great idea. That sounds like so much fun. Man, I would love to work on that. And again, this builds strong rapport between you and the client. That's the best part of this. So let me just go ahead and give you an example of why you need to do this. So here, I'm going to show you two of my older character designs. They were commissioned by the same client and I charged the same price for them. And that's the only reason why. But if these two clients came to me separately, I would give them two totally different quotes. So I have one character design, which is of a girl in pretty standard clothes. And then I have another character design of another woman who is in a lot of big high-tech armor. Well, if you really probed into the details of both clients, hypothetically, then you should definitely charge the more complex one here a lot more money, because it's going to take you more time, you have more details, and you have more things that you have to do. So that's the basis of it, and why I see a lot of artists really struggle with the commissions process and in getting any tractions and in getting more clients, because they are undercharging themselves with the amount of work, and then they get burnt out and they get stressed out and then they dump out. So hey, let's take a brief moment to interrupt this video for a word from our sponsor. It's me. Please go ahead and like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you know whenever I push out more content like this. And hey, don't forget to follow me on Instagram as well, at the Art Mentor. Now let's get back to it. Now still, make sure you don't rush into that quote yet, and instead, you still need to ask more. I know that this may appear like a long-winded version of this, and you may feel anxious that, hey, maybe I'm going to lose this client, but you're actually doing the opposite, I assure you, because the more information that you try and expunge from this conversation and about this project and about the client, the more that they're going to feel comfortable with you. And this is the number one thing that we have to do as freelancers, is we have to inspire confidence in our clients. Ask for things like, do you have any references? If they don't have any type of previous renders done, then you should definitely ask for some pictures of, hey, what are you thinking about if you're working from just a text description of that thing or that place or that book. And also, if they have any pre-renders of it, if they have any type of sketches, regardless of how horrible they are, they might have done it themselves. Most clients, private clients especially, they are not art people. So they have some pretty crude looking sketches, but that's good for you to know and to be informed with. They might have a character model, they might have a base, they might have a mock-up, whatever that is, you should definitely ask for that in this initial conversation, because again, you are evaluating them to see first off how they are going to be as a client, and also kind of how strict they're going to be. Then when you're ready, you can go ahead and start your pitch like this. So now at this stage, you are definitely ready to go ahead and start your price pitch, but hold on now. Don't rush into this because you're gonna freak them out. So instead of just coming in hot and saying, okay, cool, well, my price per character is this amount. Instead, we wanna ease them into it, and I would very much recommend that you gauge their commitment level to this project first. What I personally like to do is I like to say this sentence. So, how serious are you about this project? Would you like to start soon? You can also ask something like, hey, I've loved our conversation together. Would you like to discuss moving forward on this? Another thing that happens around this point is that you're going to be able to gauge and understand very well, hey, I'm just thinking about this, or yes, I'm ready to pull the trigger and you are my man. Now, I know that you might be thinking at this time, hey, well, this might be convincing the client to not go with me, but in actuality, what you're doing is you're disarming them completely, and now it puts the ball in their court and you are in the power position from it. So that's a big difference in this low pressure type of sales pitch. Now, when they agree, it's time for the sales pitch. So here, what you want to do is you want to summarize everything that they have told you so far and wrap all that into a nice informed quote. So basically, you want to utilize this type of format. You want to say something like, well, hey, based on your description, I'm going to give you a full-size character, and it's going to include a very detailed illustrated background, and therefore your price is this. And along with that too, what you want to include are what type of assets they're going to get. So you could structure it something like, hey, at the end of this, you're going to get a 4K JPEG file, or you're going to get PDFs of each page of your book in this type of format. So this is the basic premise of it. Me personally, I also include a process video of all of my paintings. You don't have to do that if you don't want to, but I do it for YouTube. It's fun. Now, all of this supports your quality, what they get, and really importantly, always end that rather than just a statement or a fact, end it with, hey, how does that sound to you? How does that work with your budget? This again disarms them, makes them feel more comfortable about the process, and it makes them feel less pressured. And now around this time, you might have to deal with this. Overcoming objections is something that all freelance artists need to learn how to deal with properly. And it's at this point that clients might be apprehensive, they might be unsure of what they're gonna get, or just to be honest, they might just be too cheap. So let me just review a few of the most common objections that I have seen and I've seen other people complain about, and how you could and should respond to them. Now, objection number one is pretty simple, is the client is gonna say that it's too expensive for them, it's outside of their budget. So what can you do? What can you say about that? Pretty simple. So you can say something like, okay, well, what is your budget? Let's see what we can do together. Let's see if we can work together. Myself personally, I've pitched full character pricing, and then they say, oh, I don't know, that's a little much. And I say, okay, well, let's talk, let's see what we can do together. And then maybe we'll settle on a bust, or we'll settle on a portrait of that. And then there's equally satisfied for the price tag. So that's a really great way for you to go ahead and work with them. Again, maybe they want a book that's 20 pages, and then you give them your quote. And oh yeah, they can only afford 10 pages or 15 pages, and they need to condense it down, but they're really passionate about working with you. See what you can do to get them. You don't want to just let them off the hook and say, well, too bad, see you later, son. Another really common objection that you'll experience at some point is that somebody's just gonna absolutely go nuts over your pricing and then say something like, whoa, that's way too much, or like, hey, wait a minute, I've seen this for way less than that. Okay, well, if that's somebody's interpretation of what they interpret as fair wages for artists, you can just remind them about what they're gonna get from your services. And honestly, what you should never do at this point is beg them. Don't degrade down your prices at this point just because one person in the world feels like you are charging too much. The issue with this is that it creates a really low standard for you in your art making, and then you degrade yourself and start to tell yourself that you're only worth X amount of dollars because one person happens to think that way. Not the case, by the way. So definitely don't lower your pricing just for one person. It's not the right thing to do long term. And the final most common objection is that your client might say to you, I'm not really sure, or I need to think about that. I'm not really ready to commit just yet. Now look, this is not a moment for you to be a high pressure salesman, okay? You should definitely not lean in with something like, okay, well, listen, I only got one slot left, buddy, and you got a book now, or hey, I'm not really certain. Don't lean in with any of that. Instead, just say, okay, I understand. Would it be okay though if I followed up with you in a week? Would it be okay if I followed up with you in a few days? Is that all right? Every single time I've ever asked that and followed up with them, they've had no problem. In fact, they appreciate it. It shows that you're interested, but it also shows that you are not desperate, because that also might be a power play on the part of your client, because I see them doing it
publicly online, like they should not, as we already discussed, and I see them lower the price tag in order to try and entice the client. Don't do this again. Now, once this is all ironed out, go ahead and do this. You are ready now to seal the deal, and that starts and ends with you collecting payment. Now, I always recommend that you collect payment up front. You have to collect payment up front as a freelance artist, or else it's not real. Nothing ever happened, and you do not pick up that pencil, that paintbrush, that stylus at all until you get payment. Now, what your payment structure is, that's gonna be up to you. If you're gonna do split payments, you need payment before you do anything at all. If you ever have anybody that's apprehensive about doing that, what I typically tell them is, however, though, I wanna remind you, I am a professional and I can give you references. Has anybody ever asked me for references in the last 8 years? Heck no, they have not. And they probably won't ask you either unless they're a corporate client. So this is a really bulletproof strategy for you to make sure that you get the payment that you deserve. Now, another common thing that will start to happen around here is that they might say, well, hey, look, I don't have all the money right now. Can we wait a little bit? So here's what I want to tell you with that. If a client says that they need to wait to get you money, that's a dicey situation because they may decide to spend that money on something else. What I've done before, and I actually just recently did this, where a client said, I don't have the money right now, or I won't have it until next week. And I said, okay, well, look, can you give me a good faith down payment? Can you give me like 25% right now? And I will secure your spot on my commission schedule right now if you do this. And they say yes. And I've done this multiple times. And it's a really great strategy to make sure that you get some form of commitment and to ease your anxiety about whether or not you're gonna get that money and you have some type of promise. And if you do that, I do wanna let you know that you should consider that a non-refundable deposit because somebody is promising time out of your schedule. All of this creates the most low pressure sales pitch to which you feel good doing, you don't feel awkward, and the client feels really great and excited to work with you. And when you're all set with that, of course, you want to thank them for their time, tell them that you're excited to work with them, and tell them to keep in contact with you through whatever medium you choose.
Now, as you start working with your clients, you might be thinking, well, Sean, how do I update them? Let me show you how this is done and what not to do too.
So let's talk about what do you want. Now, when you're gonna be updating your art clients, however much you're gonna be doing that, when you're gonna be doing that, what you basically wanna see is stuff like this. Me personally, as a freelance artist, these are the types of reactions that I love to see. It really encourages me and encourages them as well. What you do not want to see is clients that are laughing at what you're giving them. They're not really sure, they're asking you really specific questions. And therefore, if you are getting those types of reactions, if you're getting a lot of confusions and tons of questions or reactions that you don't want, it is your fault as the artist to fix that. So now let's talk about what not to send. So on the topic of what not to send, what I don't recommend sending. If you're gonna be starting out, you're more than likely gonna be sending them some type of sketch or rough or line example. So here's one of mine for one that I'm currently working on right now. If I were to send this example to a client, they would probably not be overly impressed unless there's somebody that doesn't look at a lot of art. You're dealing with, and you have to remember this, mostly non-artists here. So they're gonna be keying into details that you don't want them to look at right now just yet. So they're gonna be looking at things like the face, they're gonna be looking at the body, they're gonna be looking at the background, they're gonna be looking at little elements that you know, because you're an artist, you know that you're gonna have to tackle that at some point, but just not right now. If you send this to a client, it's going to be very confusing for them. And that's why you need to be really cognizant of what you're sending them and what type of reaction they're going to produce with the client not knowing anything about you or your process. So let's talk about how to improve your updates so you're gonna have great communication and a great working experience. This is typically going to be your first, most important reaction that you're ever gonna get from a client, because this is gonna be when you're gonna give them the first glimpse, the first little snapshot of what your overall artwork is going to look like. So on this topic, things that you would want to avoid. Definitely avoid chicken scratchy looking line art where there's just a whole bunch of little scratchy lines, because the hard part for a client is helping them understand every step of your artistic process, because again, for the most part, your clients are non-artists. So they don't really understand the ugly steps that your artwork has to evolve through in order to get to the nice final finished state. When you're gonna go ahead and create any type of a line art, you wanna go ahead and do that through a 3-step process. So your first one, like I showed you previously, and I said definitely don't send this to clients, that's gonna be your scratchy, really rough looking one. It's not anything that most people ever wanna look at. Your second one's gonna be a little bit more refined, it's gonna have a little bit more detailed. If you're gonna do a character, it's probably gonna include things like their armor or their clothing, or a little bit more to do with their face. And then finally, your third layer, this is when you're gonna take the time to really go ahead and go around that, get that clean, try and pull off everything in a single stroke. one of my recommendations, especially for those of you doing this digitally, is rotate your canvas a lot. Like, nobody ever really talks about this, but rotate your camera all the time. This is one of the simplest things that I always recommend. Now, one of the major things that I definitely recommend that you do too in the line art phase is that you want to also vary your line weights, like you see me doing here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a thicker line weight to the overall silhouette of important characters, important backgrounds, anything where I need to show separation. I'll also do this a lot in like clothing and armor. Just basically, when you give a thicker line weight, it helps people understand and your client understand and read exactly what's going on, where things start and stop. Now, here, let me show you again. Here's what I started out with, and here's what I have right now. Now, this is definitely more readable. I can communicate this better, but it could still be a little better. So this next process is what I call blocking out. One thing that I do above just doing the line art on top of just like a white or a gray background is I'll actually go ahead and take my lasso tool in Photoshop and I'll just go ahead and select each individual object. You can go ahead and you can create simple selections and fill it in with just a solid color ranging from, I typically do a white for the character, the person that I want to be the most in focus, the most important one, and then I'll go ahead and slowly transition that back to gray. You can see me doing that in this artwork as well. So here you can see the line art in this example, and it looks pretty good, right? However, though, there's still a lot of confusions as far as like where characters exist, what's going on with the background. So here you can see how I've gone ahead and I've just blocked out everything and I've added some simple colors, and man, doesn't that punch so much better? Isn't that so much more readable? Judging from the client reaction right here, you can see how this produced a better communication. It's a better result. To show you again with the first example, so here is what this looks like as just line art, and again, it's pretty decent looking line art, and I've gone ahead and I've also thickened up my silhouettes and everything that I talked to you about before, right? But now, boom, look at that now. This is so much more readable. You can understand how the levels of depth are going on in the background. Now, in this though, I just want to overall say this is not a perfected version. This is not exactly what my light sources are going to look like or anything like that, but this just helps your client, who's again a non-artist, understand your direction. Now, the whole point of this again is to help you communicate better. And you might be wondering like, well, why is this so important? The process of you giving updates is incredibly important for one specific reason, and that is creating confidence. You need that client throughout your entire working relationship together to feel totally secure in the fact that you are going to produce an amazing artwork for them because they have amazing ideas. And this is about squashing doubts, because looking at this from the other end here, you've been given a sum of money, however big or small that is for you right now, but you've been given a sum of money that somebody worked for, and you are tasked with producing something that is really important to them. All of this relates to overall building excitement for the end product, but also every single update that you're going to give them. Now, here's some more suggestions for how you can have amazing interactions with your clients via your updates. So one of the things I'm going to recommend that you do every single time that you're giving a client an update is you should absolutely provide some type of text description of what are you working on. My overall basic advice for this is that when you're going to be giving a client an update, you want to tell them what your focus is, because for me personally, I like to touch around a little bit of everything in every single update, and then I'll eventually start to narrow in on smaller and smaller details. Again, I like to work big picture to small picture. However you work, I definitely recommend that you give your client a text description so that they know very simplistically what to pay attention to. And that's really important because you also want to let them know in doing that what not to pay attention to. What this does effectively is it gives a client your roadmap for how you're going to produce an awesome end product for them. And again, for non-artists, y'all, because most clients are non-artists, then you're going to inspire a ton of confidence into your client, and they are going to feel like they are working with a true rock star artist like you. Now, the next thing we got to talk about is this. Creating excitement for your client and their updates is going to start and end basically with your frequency for how often they should expect it. And this is going to depend greatly on you and your situation here. So if you're just a freelance artist, you can probably knock some stuff out in a few days to a week. But if you're someone like me that's doing commissions on the side while you also have a full-time gig, then yeah, maybe you need to go ahead and you need to take a few weeks. So you need to let your client know basically when they should expect to hear from you and see some progress. So what I'm going to tell you is that you need to plan, communicate, and execute that plan. So how often are you going to do this? Are you going to do it once a week? Are you going to do it twice a week? Are you going to do it every few days? However much it is, what I'm going to advise you on is, first off, if you're going to give your client too many updates, then my friends, I just want to caution you against that, because too many updates is also too many opportunities for them to be confused. It's better for you to work a little bit longer or an extra day or so on an artwork than to just go ahead and give them like 3 or 4 updates a week. If you're going to be doing it once a week, let them know, hey, by Sunday, by Wednesday, I'm going to be going ahead and giving you an update. Hey, I can't wait to give you an update on Tuesday this week. So one of my best pieces of advice I can give you that I've been practicing for the last year is that when I'm juggling multiple clients, never, ever, ever, ever have your update day on the same day for both clients. It just stresses me out personally, and this might be it for you too. But if I tell both clients, hey, by Friday, I got to go ahead and get you an update, I'm like, oh crap, now I got to work double hard and I got to swap back and forth all the time. Instead, what I've been doing, I've been telling one client, hey, I'll give you an update on Friday, and the other client, hey, I'll give you an update on, let's say, Monday or Tuesday. I'll give you an update, okay? Now, as you're going to be updating clients, I just want to advise you that yes, you need to remember that you are a human being and that things are going to happen. People die, pets get sick, kids get sick, you get sick too. You might have a really bad week, you might have a stressful day, whatever it is. If you are not going to be able to meet that deadline, then you need to communicate that to your clients so that they know about it. And one thing I'm gonna advise you on is make sure you do it the day before, or if you're not gonna be able to make it that day because of said emergency, make sure you tell them before, like, I don't know, midnight, so they're not waiting up for you, thinking that you just ghosted them. The timing of your updates is critically important to you having an effective working relationship, because if you're not giving them updates, then they're just sitting there scratching their head going, what happened to my artist? Did they rip me off? And again, now you're negating that confidence that you previously instilled into them. Or if you're just starting out, your lack of timing in your communications is really gonna overall tank your relationship, which you don't want.
So now, do you think you need a terms of service agreement? Have you seen them out there too? Have you seen how awful people do them? Let me show you how to do it the right way and what not to do.
So let's start off by defining what is a terms of service and why do you need it. So first off, a terms of service is basically going to just give a quick snapshot, just a simple little outline of what your experience working with a client is going to be like. In that, what you want to do is you basically want to make sure that this is a nice, succinct document. You probably are wondering, what's the difference between a terms of service and a contract, and are they the same? A terms of service and a contract are two entirely separate entities. So first off, here's my terms of service that we're going to go ahead and we're going to really explore today as far as what clients should expect from working with me, and something similarly that you can create for yourself as well. The terms of service should be just a very short document versus a contract, which is actually a very lengthy document that's going to really expound upon everything that you have in your terms of service, as well as it's going to include some other additional minute details that would be very, very essential for clients. Now, if you're not sure either what a contract is, I got you on that, and I'm going to have a contract video coming for you very soon. Now, let's go ahead and let's take a look at some examples that I found of people's terms of service, and let's take a look at what you should and definitely should not include into these. Now, our first critique deals with this first issue here, which is that your terms of service should not be crammed onto a commission sheet. And this is another reason why commission sheets generally just don't work. So me personally, as I look at these terms of service as well and I'm studying them, I just don't think that there's enough detail put into this. I think that there's a lot of holes as far as what a client would expect from working with them. So if you currently have your terms of service slammed into or crammed into or with the tiniest like 2-point font on some type of commission sheet, don't do that. I very much recommend creating an entirely separate document, a separate picture of your terms of service, so then that way it is viewable and it is focused. Because right here, it's just not on a commission sheet. Now here's a really typical concern that I see with most terms of service agreements. So here's a really extensive terms of service. And when I mean extensive, boy howdy do I mean extensive. There are 16 bullet points on one part, and then there's approximately 10 additional bullet points. So if you have a really ultra lengthy terms of service agreement, y'all, I really need to tell you this. You need to ultra simplify this thing because nobody is going to read all of that. But y'all, if you follow my advice from my previous videos on this, you should be having a conversation with them that can field pretty much 90% of every single one of these. And now, friends, let's go ahead and slide on into what you definitely should not have in your terms of service. The most useless part that I tend to see a lot is when people put on do's and don'ts. And I just don't find this necessary, y'all. Let me give you a couple of reasons why. Number one is that when people are going to find you, when clients are going to approach you for a commission, they're going to do it one of only two ways. Number one is that they're going to be on your website. They're going to be on either your DeviantArt, your ArtStation page, your Instagram page, whatever account, and they're going to be scrolling through everything. They're going to get a pretty good summary of what they can expect to get and what type of artwork you do. Second is that they are going to be viewing either a post that you put up or a post that you responded to with relevant examples. Therefore, generally speaking here, under zero conditions is somebody going to be looking through your portfolio of super cool mech designs and then hit you up and say, hey man, check it out. I really like all of your awesome, cool mech designs. Do you do chibis as well? Let me put it to you this way. It's kind of like if you ask somebody what they want to eat and they give you a list of every place that they do not want to eat. That's not what they want. Personally, for me too, I feel like this is very tacky. I feel it's unnecessary. And as a client, I think that it's immediately off-putting because you're kind of like, you're shaking your finger at them saying, no, 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 I don't do that. So instead, they should just get a sense of what you do from what they see online. Now look, even without this, time and time again, you may be approached for something that you don't do. So very simplistically, just tell them, yeah, I don't really do that. Which, by the way, brings me to this important point. The most common other bullet that I tend to see on a lot of terms of service agreements is this popular one right here that says, if possible, I can decline requests. Why do you need to say this? This is so obvious. Nobody is ever going to come to you with a big project and force you to do this under the point of a gun to make sure that you get it done. So when I look at different examples of terms of service documents, I almost always see this bad boy on there, y'all. It is entirely unnecessary. You don't need to put that down because nobody's making you do this. No one's gonna force you to collect money and produce something that you don't wanna do. This is your prerogative to say no to them. No, stop putting this in there. This is so unnecessary. Next, let's take a look at this example. So the very last bullet here reads, if you want the PSD file, the additional cost is 50% of the commission cost. Y'all, we need to have a serious conversation about this. As a freelance artist, you never give a client a PSD file because you are setting yourself up to have your artwork stolen, my friends, unless you are doing a commercial project, in which case it is proprietary to the company. But overall with that too, if you are doing commercial artwork and you are being asked for a PSD file, my friends, you should be getting paid 4 to 5 figures for that original document because you are also selling your ownership of it. So definitely never ever do this. This is such a bad rookie move. Another popular item that I tend to see on here a lot is people talking about what their overall time frame is. So when I take a look at this person says turnaround time to complete is around 5 to 10 days. Back to this one, this person says commission will take 2 to 5 days depending on the difficulty. Here's my advice for you. You should not, definitely do not put this in your terms of service agreement. You will know that and be able to inform them of it through a conversation. And the one thing I'm going to constantly lead you back to here throughout this video is that you should be having a DM conversation with your clients every single time in order to qualify them. You don't need to put this in here. Next, let's talk about the subject of refunds, which, as I'm going to show you really quickly here, was a very popular bullet point. So a couple of issues that I see here is that just straight up saying, no, I don't do refunds. I understand where you're coming from here. Myself personally, if I'm paid for a project, then that is my time that I have invested into trying to find clients. And once I'm paid, once my slots are booked, once I'm fully booked up, then that is time for me not finding other clients. So then you are depriving me of money. It's your call how you want to handle this, okay? But I'm not going to explicitly state in my terms of service how I'm going to handle that. I don't think it's necessary for you in your terms of service agreement to specifically spell out every single scenario, what could happen, every disaster scenario. Here, Godzilla attacks and you need to give them a refund. I just don't find it necessary. So now that we've explored a lot of don'ts in the realm of a terms of service agreement, let's bust into what you should do. And I'm going to show you my terms of service agreement that I personally use. And we're going to take a look at this step by step. So let's bust into this. So starting out with the overall layout of mine, I personally did this in Photoshop, but if you don't have a good aesthetic sense of how things are emphasized and what to be drawn to, another great resource for you to go ahead and use in order to create your terms of service agreement is going to be Canva. Canva has a lot of amazing templates that you can use. It's personally what I use for my Instagram as well, which I hope you'll follow. That way you can create an aesthetically pleasing one. Now let's get into exactly what's on here, why it's on here, and why it's important. The first thing that you're going to notice underneath my terms of service headline here is going to be what I deem my values. So quality, communication, and integrity. This is not something that you have to do. You don't have to put it in, this type of thing. But for me, I just want to immediately communicate to a client what they should expect and why they perhaps should choose me over somebody else. Also underneath that, there's just a very simple, brief blurb about myself, that I'm a freelance artist, an art teacher, and YouTuber. So here's what you can expect. This is a nice little, just in my opinion, just a nice little intro. I would never, ever keep this long. Now, let me just break down every single bullet point on here and why each one is succinct but very important for you. The first and most important point that I make on here that I feel is the most important is the fact that I expect payment way before I'm going to do anything. As I've preached in my previous videos now, you should never, ever, my friends, ever start a project before you're paid, because it sets you up to potentially be scammed. So I put that on there, and I also specify PayPal only, because there are some weird people out there, and honestly, they're just scammers who are gonna try and say, well, I'll send you a check, an electronic check, or a cashier's check. All this is total crap. So this is the first most important bullet point to me. Next on here, and this is kind of a newer thing for me, and I would very much recommend you do it as well, is say no to NFTs. Make sure that you let your clients know right now that you are not going to be creating artwork that's going to be used for someone else's profit via NFTs. This is a huge problem in the art community. So make sure that you're not a victim of it too. The next two bullets are going to retain to rights. The first one is to our rights as artists. So I write on here that the artist retains the right to display and promote all artwork. This lightly touches upon this subject that I really just want to spell out to you, so it's extra explicit to you, and hear me out on this very well, please. Anything that you do for a client is your property. It's not their property, it's your property. Unless you're going to sign a contract and an NDA and get paid honestly about 4 figures or more for it, it's going to be your property. So don't ever let anybody make you think that because they commission you for a character that it's their design. No, my friends, no. It's your design. You are allowed to do whatever you want to do with that, except for sell it and create an additional profit from it. This next bullet refers to the client's right, just so that they know. So here I write that the client cannot claim ownership, edit, or profit from the artwork. And this is important, again, for them to realize, because anything that you do for them, it's not theirs. It's simply for their collection. And if you're doing private commissions, then you're doing for a collection. If you're going to be doing it for somebody who's going to need privacy for it, if they are going to want that under lock and key, or especially if they intend to do something that they're going to monetize and profit from, then you deserve a cut of that. So this is why it's very important, my friends, for you to make sure that you are not going to do a simple artwork for somebody, get paid once, and then they're going to profit for a lifetime over it. On the subject of commercial works, that's what this next bullet refers to. So I write here that the commercial work subject to additional terms and a contract in place. Big thing on commercial work is that traditionally you are also subject to an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement that basically says that you are not allowed to showcase, promote, or talk about it, so that it is basically kept under lock and key. If you ever are asked to sign an NDA, you should be paid for it, depending on what the size of the project is and the size of the budget and the company that you are going to work with. Additional terms should be utilized for that, and so should a contract. You always need a contract, because you need to make sure that when you're working with corporate clients for commercial purposes, that you still have some rights to it, that you can display it, and that you can show it off in your body of work. This next bullet point here refers to basically refund policies. I tell them, I'm committed to your project. When you pay me, I'm yours, and I'm gonna get this thing done. If I cannot complete it, I will issue a refund. What I see a lot of people do wrong in terms of service documents is that they'll spell out every single reason why they would refund somebody or why they would not complete a project. It's just not necessary. And lastly on here, communication, okay? So I just put on here what they can expect from me. So I say that I do it through DM or email, although to be honest with you, I've pretty much only done it through DMs for the last 7 years. Come up with your procedure, how you like to communicate, and let them know about it ahead of time. When clients know how they should expect expect to hear from you, how often they should hear from you. And again, this is an approximation. This is not something that you should say is set in stone. That's why I say weekly update. I don't say that on Sundays by 1:32 p.m. I'm going to give you an update. I just say weekly updates. These are my best practices for how you should organize your terms of service agreement. If you have any other questions, make sure you ask me down below.
Now, as you're starting to pick up some bigger clients and you want to start to maybe work in commercial illustration, then you want to definitely have yourself a contract. I'm going to show you how this is done and what needs to be in it. Check this out.
Art contracts can be so confusing. What's supposed to go in them? How do you protect yourself? And today I'm going to give you your guide on how to make an art contract for your creative services, and it's going to start right now. Do you need an art contract for every project that you're going to do for personal commissions? The simple answer that may surprise you is no, you do not. If you are just engaging in art commissions for independent clients where the artwork is simply going to be only viewable, maybe they're going to post online and credit you, or if it's just going to go into their personal collection, no, you do not need a contract in place. However, though, there are certain circumstances in which you do need a contract in place. So when do you need a contract in place, my friends? Okay, so two main reasons that you would need a contract in place is, number one, if you're going to be creating multiple works for a client. Situation number two is going to be for a commercial-based client. Again, this would be a smaller one that does not have a large backing. If you're going to be going through somebody who is attached to a publisher or a corporation, then to be honest with you, there's no point in you creating your contract because the corporation is going to have a legal team that's going to do it. These would be the two main scenarios in which you definitely should have a contract in place because it's going to protect you. Now, let's talk about this. If you're just doing private commissions, again, you don't need to have this in place because let's say hypothetically that your client commissions you to do one artwork and then they go ahead and they put it out on the blockchain as an NFT, or they were to go ahead and claim it as their own and they go ahead and publish their own book with the cover for, or they use it in a video game design that they're independently making, okay? You are still able to legally pursue action against them because that is intellectual property theft. Another really important aspect to this that most people don't know is that even if you have a contract, like I'm going to show you how to set up in a minute, then unless it is signed and stamped by a notary, then it's typically not going to be enforceable all the time. All right, so let's get into exactly what should be in a contract, what you're going to put in there to protect both yourself and your client so that you have a great working experience together. And if you would like to see this as a downloadable attachment so that you have a template for it, then if you can help me out by making sure that this video gets 100 likes and 100 comments, then I will definitely go ahead and add that into the description for you and for your benefit. Free of charge, of course. While you're viewing this, I have literally created this from all of the contracts that I have signed, so I'm not just guessing at this. So let's bust into this. So let's talk about the overall setup and how you can go ahead and do this. I went ahead and I made this on Google Docs because it's the most easily amendable. I can access it anywhere on the go. It's really easy. Another option for you to do is create an interactive PDF for it as well. No, you do not need to go ahead and set up a big expensive account through DocuSign or anything like that. But you can just go ahead and use any word processing software just to make this as simple as possible because again, you are a creative freelance artist. You are not a lawyer. Now, let's talk about some important features that you're going to need to include throughout this entire document. The first item that I want to draw your attention to is that a contract needs to state your legal names, both yourself and your client. So yes, even though you may get hit up by Demon Monkey 67 or Demon Slayer Tanjiro, you are not going to be able to protect yourself or the client with anything like that in your document. Another important addition that I want you to know is at the bottom of every single page, there's a space for both you, the artist, and your client to go ahead and initial. So this is simplistically because unless you have some type of affirmation on each individual page here, there's not exactly a way to show and demonstrate consent by both yourself and the client. So this is why you want to go ahead and set this up. Now, let me go ahead and just walk you through each of the terms that are going to be on here. The first term that should always be on your contract, in my opinion, is payment, right? Because this is the most important part. You're going to be performing service. You deserve compensation for that. So definitely outline on here what your payment structure is. The next item I have on my contract is pricing. So this section is purely for exactly what it is, but it just basically outlines exactly how much you're charging for what type of artwork. This is going to be a little lengthier if you're doing extensive work. Let's say you're working on a comic project with somebody. You're making the characters, you're making the backgrounds, you're making the vehicles, you're making other props and other environment assets. If you're going to be creating comic pages, how many pages are you going to do? What's the price per page? So this is the type of stuff that you want to go ahead and just very clearly outline, so that if there's ever any confusions or if there are discrepancies on either the part of you, the artist, or the client, this is very nicely and succinctly outlined. Now let's talk about the scope and frequency. This basically determines how many assets you are creating and how frequently your client can expect to receive said assets on here. What I do here in the second sentence is I actually define what I mean when I say artworks. And artworks are images. If you are going to be doing animations, if you're going to be doing 3D models, if you're going to be doing, then make sure that you clearly define all of those terms. So on here, you can see I have a spot for me to put in how many artworks and how many designs I'm completing per month. So now let's talk about rights to assets. So I put on here straight up in the first sentence, these are meant for personal, non-commercial use. I clearly and define and outline, first off, the client's rights. So you see on here, I say that the client may not claim the artwork as their own. They may not utilize the artwork nor any assets of the project as NFTs, because again, this is a huge major problem in the art community, a lot of art theft going on. Don't be a victim of it. Make sure you cover yourself on this too. The client must credit the artist, me, when sharing and displaying the artworks in any venue, including but not limited to social media websites and platforms. I would very much recommend that you keep this broad. Don't be too specific with that one. The client may not publish the artworks without the permission of the artist, me. Again, if they're gonna publish it, I deserve a cut, and so would you. And lastly, the client shall be given completed assets in a JPEG or PNG format. So this now leads me into the topic of what exactly are you entitled to in this? Now let's talk about your rights as the artist creating artwork for your clients. So you're gonna see that the very first sentence is that I retain a portion of the intellectual property of all artworks. This is important, y'all, because even though, yes, you are being commissioned with an idea, it is not their property. Right here are some basic rights that you have to the artwork. Is that first off, yes, you retain the right to display any artwork for promotional purposes. Another important bullet that I put on here is that I basically cannot monetize that artwork for myself without the explicit permission of the client. And this is important again too, because you don't want to be a crook and you don't want them to be a crook. So make sure that you model what you preach. And lastly, all of the rights to the original PSD files, as I'm working in Photoshop or whatever program y'all are working in here, those are mine. They're not the client's, okay? If you ever have a client that asks you for a PSD file and they're not paying, honestly, 4 to 5 figures for it, yeah, they can go ahead and take a hike because they're going to steal from you. Alterations to the artwork, y'all, is a huge topic that you should absolutely outline. I think that you should definitely think long and hard about what that means to you and what an alteration is considered. What I deem to be an alteration would be something that's gonna take me around an hour or more to change. Let's say that a client is looking at this artwork right here and they say, oh, instead of that purple skin for the dragon, can I have blue instead? I'm not gonna charge them for that, and I'm not gonna consider that an alteration either. But let's say, for example, they say, you know, I don't really like the size of this sword right here. Can we go ahead, can we swap that out to a totally different one? That I would consider an alteration. Now let's talk about the release of assets. So you can see here that I say the completed assets for this project will be emailed to the client. So again, here you are very explicitly saying and stating exactly what the expectation is and the method for how you're going to deliver those assets. If you're going to use a program such as WeTransfer, or Dropbox, you would want to state that in here as well, especially if you're doing a lot of assets towards the client. But yes, if you're not getting paid for it, never, ever, ever, ever send a client a completed high resolution image without some type of a watermark if they have not paid you for it yet, okay? That's a big scam. It happens all the time. Don't be a victim of it. Now, the last actual term here has to do with breach of contract. A breach of contract, again, is basically you're kind of an exit clause, so that if both you or the client violate any of the terms in here or these additional terms that I'm stating here, then you are not obligated, and neither is the client, to continue the working relationship. All of this is just to protect both of you. And the final page down on here is basically for you to sign and date. This will also be where a notary will go ahead and stamp and sign as well.
So now that you know real things you can do, actionable things you can do in order to start to get clients, you might be thinking, well, where do I find them, Sean? Well, I got you in this video series right here. Go check it out.